different twist, and I thought it might be fun to kind of think about what public health implications are, some of the things that we're talking about today. So I'll tell you a little bit about some of my research, but I want to start with all mosquitoes are not created equal. It'll be the one thing I hope that you remember from my talk, in addition to maybe a couple of other things. But this is really important when we think about climate influencing vectors, because it's going to influence them differently, and it's going to influence our disease risk differently. So I've got Culex vectors of West Nile. And notice what she's doing is she's laying an egg raft, and that raft is about 300 eggs. And so you can just think about what kind of water I need to raise 300 babies compared to Aedes aegypti, which lays single eggs. And you can think about the sources of water that I need to lay a single egg in terms of competition and resources. And that's really important when we start thinking about the implications of these diseases, and we'll talk about precipitation in particular, because they're driven by climate, right? In terms of how quickly that mosquito develops, temperature is going to greatly influence how quickly that process goes on. It influences how long the female mosquito survives. Remember, they are not flying syringes. They don't, for the most part, get born infected, but rather they have to take a blood meal. That's what's going on over here. They take a blood meal and from some sort of a reservoir that has it. So with dengue, it's us. And we're the ones that walk around with dengue. We infect the mosquito, and then the mosquito goes and infects someone else. So that's an important part. How quickly she becomes infective and ready to pass it on? Temperature. Right? So that's where we get linked in, and that's why it's important to kind of think about these diseases. But we'll talk a little bit about the differences as well. Anybody's backyard look like this? Hope not. But you see a few things. So I started, or it's part of the idea here, is thinking about how we live in places and how we adapt. So if you think about water harvesting and some of the implications of those, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what did I say about Culex? How many eggs? All right. Where am I going to lay 300 eggs? In the bird bath? I'm going to lay it in the swimming pool, absolutely. I'm going to maybe lay it in the bird bath. Potentially in the rain barrel, right? Is there anywhere I'm not going to lay it? Not so much in the tire, right? No, rain gutter is going to be iffy, depends on, yeah. Not so much in the water saucer under my flower pot. I'm going to leave those for Aedes aegypti, right? And so hopefully what we're doing right there is we're thinking about the different things that we're doing in terms of where water is aggregating, where it's collecting, and how that's influencing our risk. Okay, so that's what this picture is kind of reminding us of and thinking for us about. Let's think about that, which is, this is your new backyard, and that mosquito has a red abdomen, so she's infectious. Thank you. We did an experiment. This is really cool. Sorry, I have to say it that way. Biosphere 2, I saw that it's on the list of places you might want to go visit. When you do, look for my mosquito traps, because they let me do flight range experiments up there in Biosphere 2. So we're simulating our yard in terms of mosquitoes have to lay the eggs in containers. So we've got our containers here, and we have our messy backyard, and we have our cleaned up backyard. And what we're looking for is how does that influence where the mosquito goes and how she flies. So there we go. They let us do it in the rainforest, the savanna, and the fog desert in Biosphere 2, and then we're comparing them. And these are our results. We're brown in Arizona, sorry, and green in the tropics. And what do you see? What you see is that how we're maintaining and what we're doing in our backyard is facilitating where that mosquito is flying. That's implications on disease risk and whether or not we have Aedes aegypti here in Tucson, but we don't have dengue transmission. And this might be helping to explain what's going on, is that if I don't have a lot of containers, Aedes aegypti is not flying very far, is not dispersing out from a release site. But she is in the tropics, right? So when we're thinking about what our backyards look like here in Tucson, this seems to be making a difference. Notice, however, that when I get into the really messy backyard, I lose that effect. So clean up your backyards, especially if you live in Tucson. But as huge, so climate influences the mosquito survival, what the mosquito is doing, how quickly she becomes infectious. All mosquitoes are not created equal. It's a really important thing that we have to think about in terms of disease transmission. Neglect breeds mosquitoes. So if we think about some of the things that we're doing in terms of adapting and thinking about water conservation, whether we have a swimming pool, whether our economy tanks and we foreclose on our swimming pools, these have implications for disease transmission. And I think that pulls me out of my time because I'm over. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.